with the upcoming Scream 7 movie now on the horizon, with the character of Stu Macher now set to be confirmed in returning for this upcoming Scream movie, there are many elements that are going to be coming into play, especially now with the character of Stu Macher set to return in potentially having to go as far as to confront Sidney, as the million-dollar question now moving forward is how exactly is this concept going to be implemented in this upcoming Scream movie. As joining me right now to talk about the upcoming character of Stu Macher in Scream 7 is my good friend and YouTuber that goes by the name of Mark and I. Now Mark, it's been quite some time since me and you have went back to talk about Scream. We've been talking about Scream off camera, and this is something that I feel as though is extremely pivotal and very important and very big in the Scream fandom, especially understanding now that we are going to be getting essentially what we've been asking for such a long time in some kind of a way, and that is to see Stu Macher return in the form of potentially being a Ghostface and going up against Sidney. As I wanted to go on ahead now and further ask you the question as to what you think this is going to imply going into Scream 7, because not only do I feel as though is Scream 7 going to be a very important film that's going to basically kind of dictate the pace in which is going to kind of determine as to where we go in the future, potentially with Scream 8, maybe even Scream 9, or maybe even if Scream 7 is going to be the last of its kind. As I wanted to go on ahead and ask you about how you personally feel, as well as all of you guys watching this video right now down in the comment section below, on how everyone essentially feels about having to see potentially Stu return as the face of Ghostface for this upcoming movie, because not for nothing this could go in one of many different ways in terms of its overall direction. They could essentially have Stu kind of reveal as to what he's been doing this entire time if he happened to have survived the first movie, which I think by now kind of gives us a clear-cut indication that he did in some way, shape, or form, because I genuinely don't think that he's going to appear as some sort of an apparition or maybe some sort of a hallucination, so to say, if someone's on drugs or something, you know? So what I ultimately wanted to go as far as to know right now from you, Mark, are your overall thoughts and opinions and even expectations from the character of Stu Macher in Scream 7, and if you believe that this is going to somehow be a good way to kind of tie things in, maybe even have Stu be the final boss per se, as being maybe the last of like the legacy Ghostfaces, or if you think as though this is going to potentially blow the lid in having to introduce a bigger story down the line.
We've spent a lot of time over the last few years as we've watched like the Scream franchise evolve in 5, 6, and we've talked about what we want to see, what we were hoping to get out of the plot, how things were going to go, and there were a lot of things that we had as far as ideas that sort of loosely made it into the movies. And one of the things that we talked about was we really wanted to see, or at least we showed a lot of enthusiasm about the idea of having Stu return in some way, because Stu has some plot lines or plot threads that have not yet been wrapped up, I think. And if you look at the history of Stu's character, I mean, he has some connections to other characters that appear in the franchise. And this is the first time hearing Matthew Lillard is actually back for the next Scream movie. That was really surprising that they would do that, because I'm like, that if he comes back as an in the flesh thing, you want it to be a surprise. We can't know that Matthew Lillard is coming back as Stu and that Stu is the killer ahead of time. That's boring. Like, sure, there's a right way to do things, and maybe they could still surprise us with that information, but it's weird, right? You know, you don't announce like, hey, this killer is returning, because like the whole thing with Scream is you don't know who it is. It's exciting to watch and figure out who it is, what their motivations are, and whatever. Now, I will say, for the most part, I feel kind of disappointed in a lot of the reveals of the killers, because it's always the cousin or the mom or the aunt or someone who is tied to a past killer and they want revenge. It's like, dude, your nephew, your son, your daughter was a serial killer, and now you're trying to say that you're being a serial killer is genetic and that you're going to serial kill everyone involved in his, like, that just seems stupid. So like, I wanted to see something else, some other motivation where you weren't related to someone else. I don't want to see a cousin that wants to kill to take the spotlight. I don't want to see, you know, the brother and the sister and the dad of like another brother coming in, whatever. And there were so many killers in Scream 6 as well. 3 different killers all coming after someone like for revenge. It's too much. They need to wrap that up. Now, on the other hand, if you're going to announce Matthew Lillard is coming back in some way, then his part in the movie isn't going to be a surprise, because you already know Matthew Lillard is going to be in it, and who else would he play other than Stu, right? But if they go the same way as Billy Loomis and have him just be like a hallucination or a flashback, that's going to be kind of annoying. Now, Matthew Lillard is also, he's, you know, I'm no disrespect, but he's aged, and it shows. So I don't know how they would do a flashback for him, like, to show a younger version of him. Sure, they could do like the de-aging CGI thing, but like, I don't know. Scream isn't exactly the type of franchise that does that sort of thing, really. So I don't know, but I would have a hard time believing that another character somehow is connected in some way where Matthew Lillard is going to be a hallucination, because we've already seen that. I don't think you can do that in any way that would be acceptable. Now, I talked about and I suggested that in the past, and I think you were pretty enthusiastic about the idea of a possibility of one like Matthew Lillard's character Stu being alive, and I think that him surviving is a big deal, because I believe in the second movie, when we saw the Mickey situation in I think it was Billy Loomis's mom, right? It's been a long time since these movies. Like the whole thing that Jamie Kennedy's character was talking about is making sure that they're dead, right? Check the bodies, make sure that they don't come back and all that stuff. But I don't remember them doing that in the first movie with Stu. And it's possible that Stu could have been hit with the TV, and the impact could have crippled him, broken his bones, and you could also say the TV electrocuted him, which could have momentarily stopped his heart. And then maybe he gets in the ambulance or something like that, and they resuscitate him or something like that. But he has a lot of injuries, maybe a broken neck, broken spine of some sort, or whatever. We don't know to what capacity he would be, down and out. He does have family though, and I'm bringing this up despite the fact that I don't like the idea of the killers are always family members of a past killer. That's very annoying. But they're probably going to do that anyway, because every time we were like, hey, we hope it's going to be this. Nope, it's a brother, it's a sister, it's a cousin, it's a dad. It's always someone related. It's very frustrating, and that's the only thing that Scream wants to do with the killers, because apparently familial bonds and blood are the only thing that qualify you as being a killer in the Scream franchise. Now, that said, because Scream is so special in that among the slashers it's different every time and it's sort of a mystery throughout and it could be anybody, that makes Scream stand out on its own. And because they haven't strayed away from that formula for so long, and because every killer has had a familial tie, they could mix it up this time and do something different. I don't think they will. They could, but they won't. Now, Stu has a sister named Leslie. And I believe Leslie was only mentioned once. I thought I read somewhere that maybe there was a picture of his sister that was blurred or in the background or in the distance, but I couldn't find any evidence of that, but I read it somewhere, so I don't know if that's true. But it would stand to reason that Leslie is, as the older sister, which we know she's older than Stu, she could be looking out for her little brother. Maybe she's taking care of him. Maybe she's protecting him. Maybe Stu was injured and she's, taking care of him over the years. I said before that maybe she stole, took him out of the ambulance or something like that. Maybe she worked at the morgue and pronounced him dead just to protect him because he's a killer and it was going to look bad for the family. So she, pronounced him dead and then was like, oh, I burned his body. But really, she took him into the basement and she's been healing him. And then Stu's been living in a private life, recovering, recuperating, or planning his revenge with Leslie's help. We also know that Stu's parents are unnamed as well. So it's possible they could be out there, but they'd be geriatric, really, right? Grandparent. They'd be so old at this point, because Stu has to be 50, 60, so I couldn't imagine 70-year-old, mom and dad Macher running around killing people, with an IV on a stand, or they're in a wheelchair, or they've got some sort of wooden cane or something like that, with a knife at the end of it. That's not going to happen. So I think it could be his sister. I think it could also, if they were going to bring him back as a hallucination, because let's be real, if they're repeating the same plot idea of the killer as a relative, they're not above the idea of Stu being a hallucination, even though we've already seen that with Billy. I think it's possible that Stu could appear as a hallucination to Leslie, and she's the killer, and that we see it in a similar way where it's like a Dexter Morgan, Harry Morgan type of thing, right? Where you just see the hallucination and it's actively whispering in your ear, taunting you, teasing you, trying to, do whatever you can to make her go crazy. I think that could definitely be a possibility. And I think it's also important that we note that we've already seen someone else related to Stu be killed. Vince Schneider, for example, he died and his mom is Leslie. So now you have Stu and Vince both dead, who are related to Leslie, who's never been shown in the movies. We don't know what she looks like. So I'm now knowing that Matthew Lillard is coming into the fold, I am willing to put all my chips, I'm calling it all in. I think it's going to be Leslie this time, and either Stu is alive and they're working together, or Leslie is seeing an imaginary Stu taunting her and telling her that she has to get revenge for her son. That's what I think is going to happen. I think that's the most probable is Leslie. But it seems as well too to keep in mind that it's possible we have multiple killers. So does Leslie have a new husband? Does Leslie have a boyfriend? Like that sort of thing. Like there's a lot of little bits and pieces there that we don't actually know. I don't recall if Vince had a dad. He did. So yeah. So I just looked it up real quick. So Vince also had a dad who's unseen, unmentioned. So it's possible that Leslie and the unnamed father of Vince are coming back as well. Leslie would have motivation for her brother and her son, which is like the purest of motivations as far as the Scream mythos is concerned. And then the husband would be the father husband of Leslie would be like, yeah, like I want to get revenge for my son. We saw that in the last movie. It's going to happen again here. Like it's totally plausible. It's totally reasonable. I think that's what they're going to do. But I think it's also important to remember that as the further that we get along with Scream, it's getting so over the top and self-awareness with like pop culture, like present day references, which it's always been known for, but it's doing that more now, that I think that there's no rules. So there's nothing really left for Jamie Kennedy's character, I forget his name. So there's nothing left to reflect on because like we're in uncharted territory every step of the way. But I think that as we talked about, I think that it's definitely possible that whoever the killer is needs to kill Sidney to put a pin in it. Sidney does not get a happy ending unless she kills the main killer behind all these, like the person behind the orchestration of these killings. She can take him or her with, but Sidney has to die too. So that way there's no reason to involve Sidney. There's no reason to do anything and engage with that character anymore and leave that alone. Because I think even though in the real world, the Carpenter characters, the actresses, they probably aren't going to come back due to some issues with Sam Carpenter, the actress, I forget her name, but that whole thing. So that if Sam's not back, then Tara's probably not back, and the Carpenters are not going to be a part of it anymore, which means that they have to focus on Sidney now. And if they're going to focus on Sidney, they have to kill her and they have to move on. Sidney needs to die, and so does Gale. They both need to go. Like, it just needs to be over with. They need to move on, and then they can do a whole reboot that can be in the same universe with all new characters and no references to the past other than being self-aware that, hey, we're doing a reboot. And by that time, Sidney's dead, the Carpenters are not in it anymore, Gale is dead, and no legacy characters are alive. That's what I think they should do to start fresh, and that's what I think is going to happen with Stu and Sidney.
You know, it's kind of crazy that you bring up a few very good points, and I feel as though I think that by the end of this film, and this is just me maybe, but I think that if you're going to have Sidney prevail, it has to be in a way where it comes through a massive struggle. You can't have something that I think was similarly done with Jamie Lee Curtis's character as Laurie against Michael during the events of Halloween Ends, because all of that entire ordeal could have been done better. And I think as though if we're going to be seeing, I think maybe some sort of like a big fight involving Stu and Sid by the end of Scream 7, then I think that if Sidney were to prevail, it needs to come at the cost of maybe her own life. Maybe they both perish, because it's been a recurring theme that the good guy always ends up winning by the end, and it's not as though any of the other Ghostfaces kind of serve a lasting purpose in having like some sort of a massive impact on the character moving forward, and that's only been done through the addition for Sidney by having her recall not just one event, but several events that have occurred with multiple different people that have had a ever-longing impact on her, versus having one person per se leave that everlasting impact. And I think that Stu would be a great addition to that in a way where I think it would be really cool to see if perhaps maybe Stu was one of the very few that had the longest, more devastating impact on Sid's life than any others, perhaps including, her cousin and Roman and etc. But I think moving forward with this, what are your overall thoughts on there potentially being kind of doppelganger ghost faces? Like, we see them throughout the film, but they're not really ghost faces that are highly intelligent or very durable or very aggressive, up until the point where at the end, maybe perhaps as Sidney and company assume that they have taken down all of the ghost faces, only for one of them to go, oh, okay, well, by the way, there's another. And that, ringleader per se ends up actually revealing himself, and it ends up being Stu. I think by having Stu appear as like a surprise of how you can ultimately end up using Stu Macher's Ghostface for this upcoming Scream movie.
So I think with Scream, it's always been about the who and the why, like the motivation behind it. And you want to know, like, I think that's one thing that always captivated me. Like I bring this up every single time. With other slasher movies where the killer is just like this iconic, like, supernatural tour de force, whether it's Michael, whether it's Jason, whether it's Freddy, like, you just want to go there and you want to see, like, okay, how are they going to survive? Because we know who, we know why. Like, the motivations of those characters are almost the same. I would even go so far as to say they are the same in every single movie, every single story, every single arc, no matter what. Regardless if there's any nuance, it's always like a very specific motivator that makes them do what they do. And it gets to the point where it's like, okay, like, it's just sloppy, messy, gory fun, and that's all that it is. But Scream has intrigue. Scream has the, like, okay, who is behind it? Like, and I think what's also brilliant as well is that, let me rephrase that, not necessarily brilliant, but I think what's also intriguing about it as well is that we are always introduced to the killer before we know who it is, and we spend a lot of time with that character throughout the movie before it's revealed that they're the killer. And I think that's interesting because you see a certain side of them, whether it's a fake side, whether it's, their playful side, whatever. They're playing a part so they can carry out their mission, which is to get revenge, which is almost always the case. In fact, it probably is always the case. And every single time it's, oh, you ruined my life this way, or you ruined my life that way, or I want to be famous, or, you killed my son, and then, whatever. And then you have the killers always doing that. It's a very specific set of why. There's not really a whole lot of branching out beyond that. With Stu, there's a lot going on with that. I think if the focus isn't so much the who, it's more so about the what has he been up to. Like, we know why he would want to be going after them if he was alive, right? We know why he would want to. Like, Stu's character is the OG, right? Like, he's not only if we're going off of the predication that, or the context that he's possibly alive, if we go down that theory, I would think that Stu is recovering, he's hiding, he's planning, he's plotting the ultimate, right? He's trying to do whatever he possibly can to get full revenge on everyone. And I think it's more than just Sidney, because yeah, the TV fell on him, yeah, he blames Sid for that, but Sid has survived like year over year, killer after killer, etc., 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 all these copycats, all these duplications, all these wannabes. That would piss him off, I think. Because I feel like if you're a serial killer with those motivations initially in the first movie, you're a narcissist, a sociopath. And I'm not like, some sort of psychoanalytical major or anything like that. I'm not a therapist. I'm not any of that stuff. I don't have any of the credentials for that. But, what little I've read on Wikipedia back in the day tells me that a person like that is probably going to want to not only kill Sidney to feel like, hey, I finally got you, but he probably also wants to take out any other connection or relation to anyone that was a killer before because they've made him look bad. Because if I'm Stu, I would think, like, you guys all suck, you're dragging my name through the mud, there's so many copycats, you've all failed, I was the original, and you've all tried to follow in my footsteps poorly, I need to show you how it's done, and I also want to, like, come back at you and get my revenge on you for besmirching my good name. You know what I mean? It's something that I've long since thought about, and I think that there's a lot of possibility if he is even alive. I think that there's a lot of wiggle room there to make him alive. I think the whole thing could be, how is he alive? How did he survive? Like, who helped him? What has he been planning? The why wouldn't so much be the huge motivator this time, but I would think that if Stu was around, you're right, I definitely don't want it to be a one and done thing, like in one movie. That's stupid. It definitely needs to be a two-parter. I think what they should probably do, if I'm in charge, right? If I'm in Hollywood and I'm working for Miramax or whatever company is taking this on, and I'm writing it, or I'm a producer, I end the first movie with killing a bunch of characters that you absolutely love, and then you kill Gale, and then you end that as Stu getting away, and then now Gale knows, Stu got away with it, like, I am not safe. And I think we've all sort of seen that eventually, if the storyline goes on long enough, the main character does die. If there's enough movies, enough story arcs, enough returning sequels, eventually the main character dies. It always happens. Almost always. I mean, I can't say always definitively, but very often it does. Which means that Sidney would have to go out in a blaze of glory, where she would take out Stu and herself and put an end to the Scream madness once and for all. Because if you're going to start with Stu, you got to end with Stu. And bringing him back makes perfect sense in that way. So I feel like after everything that happened with Six and the drama with the actresses and performers in real life and all that political stuff that happened, I'm not here to talk about that, but all that stuff, that probably puts the people in the writer's room to sort of like rethink, like, okay, we've tried to do some things, the movies were successful, whether fans liked it or not, they did, they were popular enough to where people are talking about it, it made its money back, whatever, they were fine. But you want to do something, a little bit unique. And Star Wars did it, bringing back Luke, Leia, and Han. Marvel's doing it with bringing back Robert Downey Jr. Like, every time a movie goes too far off in one direction and you don't see the monetary gains that you want, you try to go back to your roots and copy it as much as possible and bring back what made people love the movies in the first place. And that's why Stu coming back is such a big deal, but you can't have him just be a one and done. You can have him be a major threat in the first movie and then kill him in the second, or maybe they want to do a trilogy with him. I think that might be too much. I think 2 movies is probably fine, and then reboot it. But I do think you're kind of getting also to a point where there's that sort of what is the word I'm looking for? You're getting to that point where you want to have like a really that solid number where you get to Scream 10, right? That's Scream X. So you have 7, 8, 9. And I think if that trilogy is all going to be about bringing back the original killers, or like having a storyline that starts with 7 and then kills Sidney in 9 or whatever it wraps up, then you can do the reboot with Scream X. Like, that's the sweet spot right there. I think there's something there's just something about that I think would make sense. I don't know what the plan is. I haven't read any details where they're like, hey, like, we really want to, do a new trilogy. I think they did that and it didn't go so far and they had to rewrite and change things. But I think that there's possibility that they could do like a 7, 8, 9, have Stu be the big bad. Maybe he's got more than one killer working with him. Maybe one of his other, partners or accomplices is Leslie. Maybe the other one is Leslie's husband. Maybe it's something else. Like, it's whatever the case is, the killer is going to be related to or directly connected to a past killer. That's what they've almost always done, except for Scream 4, which it was the cousin of Sidney in that case. But they're really focused on it needs to be family, and that's what it's got to be. I think 2 movies with Stu would be good, but I think they're definitely going to be more than one killer, and if Stu is alive, it's going to be his family is going to want revenge for destroying their entire family legacy. I think that's what they're going to do, and I think 2 or 3 movies they could somehow make that work.
Not for nothing, I really like the idea of what they could ultimately end up doing with Stu for this movie, as we are going to be talking more about this for the upcoming videos that we have lined up for you guys. So again, let us know what you all think down in the comment section below in regards to Scream 7, your overall expectations for Scream 7, and what you guys expect to see go down involving Stu Macher's Ghostface potentially in this upcoming Scream movie. So again, we are back and we're going to be bringing you guys so much more content along the way, so make sure you guys smash that subscribe button and turn on all notifications so that way you guys never miss a single video that is posted onto the channel. To which also make sure to give this video a big fat thumbs up by smashing that like button down below if you guys are simply excited for this upcoming Scream movie and of course enjoyed the video. Tune back in for more, and with all that being said, I want to thank you all so much for your time, as we'll be seeing each and every single one of you down in the comment section below and in the next video. Take it easy everybody and have a great day. Peace!